Welcome to episode 1 of Raj's Garage. Why? What? Well, you may or may not know, I post a lot of pictures of my cars on Instagram, Raj Sangha 911. Currently there are about 15 cars in the fleet. I constantly get asked questions, what have you done to this car? What are the wheels on the car? How long have you had the car? What are the running costs? What are the pitfalls? So I thought, you know what, why not document it? So I'm going to go through each and every car one by one, give an indication of what I've done to the cars, what I'm planning to do to the cars. If I add any more cars, and I say if, when, because I do go through a lot of cars, I'll document them as well. So today, the first car we're going to talk about is my BMW E46 M3 CSL. Okay, so why a CSL? Well, we have to go back a little bit further. 2001, I bought my first E46 M3 silver SMG coupe. Loved it to bits. 2005, I bought an E46 M3 cabriolet SMG again. Loved it to bits. Sold it, moved on, whatever. And then a few years ago, decided that I need a track toy after going on a few track days with friends. So speaking to people, most people say, look at a Porsche GT3, a lot of money. Or what about a CSL, E46 CSL? So I started looking at CSLs, silly money. Prices were creeping up. Thought, I don't really want to spend that on my first track car because ultimately I could destroy it on a track and that would be very painful and very costly. So I looked at the next best option. Well, an E46 M3 and convert it into a track toy. So I bought an E46 M3, converted it into a track toy. We'll talk about that in another video. Now, after driving the E46 M3, loving it to bits on the track, I realized I still yearned for a CSL. Never owned a CSL, so I thought, let's start looking at CSLs. So about 2.5 years ago, started looking for CSLs. Prices were creeping up. Probably saw best part of 10, 12 cars. But it's only until you start delving into the cars, getting the car on a ramp, checking the underside, checking if there's been any accident damage, that you realize, again, whilst they look great from the outside, they hide some negative history. So in the end, I sort of lost interest. And I thought, is this what most CSLs are about? Which obviously they're not. But the ones that I saw, they all had some sort of history. Some of the ones that were really good, the prices were like ridiculous, and I thought, no, I'm not prepared to pay those kind of sums for a CSL. So I backed off, took a chill pill, really, and just viewed the market from a distance. This one popped up at a dealer in Lincoln, Monarch Enterprises. They had a nice selection of cars, BMWs, Lambos, Ferraris. Price fairly high, fairly steep. So reached out to them. They weren't prepared to negotiate. It's a CSL at the end of the day. They knew what they had. Sat back, thought, okay, just leave it alone for a little while. A few months later, COVID effect potentially, reached out to them and they said, actually, we could do a little bit of a deal. A couple of phone calls later, a couple of emails later, I'd done a deal without viewing the car, obviously, because of COVID. Went to see the car. The car was exactly as they described. Spot on. History was fantastic. Low number of owners, and Jesus, low miles. Only 23,000 miles on this particular car. We bought the car. Wow, just wow, amazing car. One of the reasons why I managed to negotiate a great deal on this particular car was because it needed some TLC. Not engine-wise, not externally or bodywork wise, but tires, discs and pads. Previous owner had it parked up probably for months, hadn't used it. The tires, in fact, which were pretty okay. The problem was they were date marked 2005. The discs were poor and the pads had very little life in them. So first stop, Southall tires, new Michelin tires, put on the car, and then BMW, new discs, new pads. Stock disc, stock pads wasn't really going to track the car hard anyway, and I've got the other car for that, so I just wanted to keep it sort of OEM. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the CSL. Personally, and this is personally, I think the M3 E46 CSL is the best looking BMW M3 by far, even better looking than the E30 M3. I know that's controversial. I do own an E30 M3 and we'll talk about that in another video, but look, isn't she gorgeous? Now, BMW only made, from what I know, about 1,500 M3 CSLs over a 6-month period in 2003. Only 422 right-hand drive UK examples were delivered, of which I think 300 or so are in the silver grey and the balance are in sapphire black. I prefer the silver grey, just personal opinion really. Externally, there are a few differences that the CSL has over the stock E46 M3. At the rear, this ductile spoiler, which is built into the rear deck lid. Come around the front, as well as the lower carbon sections here, you've got this big hole. What's that for? Well, that's actually for the carbon intake. Copied many times on the standard E46 M3s, but what you can't copy is the sound of the carbon intake, and you'll hear that shortly when we go for a drive. The wheels are also different on the CSL over the standard E46 M3, which came with 18 or 19 inch wheels, whatever your preference was. Inside, massive difference. Loads of Alcantara, absolutely loads of Alcantara, loads of carbon fiber. And you got to remember, this car came out in 2003. There weren't many supercars in 2003 that had this amount of Alcantara and carbon fiber as stock, standard from factory. Nothing special inside, no digital displays, no steering wheel controls on the button, just one button on the steering wheel which turns the traction on or the traction off. Then there's the gearbox, SMG2 on the CSL. Now, in the M3 world, a lot of people loathe the SMG box. Bit clunky, I get it, but that's what makes this car a CSL. The appeal of the gearbox, the way it drives. Yes, you've got to warm it up. On cold, it is very lumpy and jerky, but once you've warmed the car up, warmed the box up, and you're going through the gears, put it into crazy mode, this car just is an animal. So what are my plans with the car and what have I done to the car already? Bar the brakes, discs and tyres, the only thing I've really done is added a Clifford Smart Track tracking system. Have to protect the vehicle. These cars, the price is just going north. The last thing I want is somebody stealing it. I am going to change the suspension, probably KW or Bilstein, do some research. And I'm going to change the exhaust. Super Sprint, that's the way to go with the exhaust. Internally, the stereo, 2003, no Bluetooth, stereo's got to come out. So I'll be replacing the stock stereo with a Kenwood CarPlay unit, a shallow mount unit, actually weighs less than the stock BMW stereo. And I'll also be changing the speakers just to improve the internal sound. I'm not adding a subwoofer or anything. I'm not really planning to go on long drives where I need bass. We will be documenting the removal of the stereo and the speakers at some point. The stereo in here is the same stereo that you get in stock E46 M3s. So it'll give you an idea of what can be done, how fairly straightforward it is. Obviously the door cards in this CSL are carbon fiber, different to a stock E46 M3, but it'll give you an idea of what you can do to the speakers. Now, let's go for a drive. Let's experience what the CSL is all about, and let's hear that carbon airtake. That induction noise is just to die for. Let's go. So here we are in the CSL, SMG gearbox, car's nicely warmed up. SMG gearbox works perfectly fine when the car's warm. On cold, yes, it's a little bit sluggish. Okay guys, thank you for watching the first episode of Raj's Garage. Appreciate you taking the time out. Hopefully you enjoyed it. As I said, this is the first episode. There's going to be quite a few more episodes coming. I will document each and every car, and if some of those cars are having some modifications done, I'll document those as well. If you have any questions, any comments, drop them below. DM me, DM Car Audio Security. Any questions about the audio and the security, again, comment below or DM us and we'll answer those for you. Subscribe, that's very, very important. Click the bell icon and I'll see you soon. Bye.